we talked about your goals for today. When you hear of a team, what do you think of? What is a team? What are words that come to mind? Collaborative. Cohesive.
Common goal.
Common goal.
Group. Constructive.
Group. Constructive. Can there be a destructive team?
Absolutely.
Okay. Not to be. What other words do you think of when you think of a team?
Complementary.
Good word. What do you mean by complementary?
People within the group should have skills that complement each other so that you're able, as a group, to do far more than one individual could.
So my football player was right here, correct? There are a lot of different positions on a soccer team, correct? What if you had a soccer team, 11 players, correct? If all 11 of them were goalies, and they were good goalies, what kind of team would that be?
Well, they never get scored on.
Maybe. But only one of them could touch the ball.
True.
Okay.
You know, handballs, the
Yeah.
feet.
Any basketball fans here? So, you know, does everybody know what a point guard is in basketball? What's a point guard do?
He runs the play or disseminates the ball to other players or facilitates.
Okay. So he kind of directs traffic, or she.
Or she, yes. Or he, she.
So if we had a team that have 5 point guards, how well would that team operate?
Wow.
Why not? Why would they not work well together?
Seems like a team of 5 captains, basically. 5 leaders.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Too many cooks.
That's
They're all
right.
directing each other where to go.
So there'd be a lot of competition for authority, wouldn't there? So the complementary is very important. They're all important. This is the definition of the team. It comes from a book. It's a 20-year-old book now. It's hard for me to believe this book is 20 years old, but it's still as good today as it was then. Small number of people with complementary skills, committed to a common purpose, performance goals, an approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable. So I think you just about touched on every one of those. So have any of you ever been part of a team that was missing one of those pieces?
Yeah.
What piece were they missing, Corbett? You've been unbelievably quiet so far.
Accountability, mutual accountability.
How was it missing?
It's not my problem, I did my part, and they completely disengage. It's like a pitcher. Pitcher can do pitch a perfect game, but or not a perfect game. He pitches a full 9 innings, doesn't allow a single run. But his batters don't give him a single run either, so they go into the 10th and they blow the game in the 10th. The pitcher starts blaming his batters for not scoring.
Right.
It's a group effort. Even if you do your job, it's still a group effort.
Isn't that a common misconception of that I think a lot of students have of teams, that they divide the work into the amount of, 5 people, 20% of the work, they do their 20%, and then they disengage. They're not, it's not like a continual process. Like a lot of people don't conceive teams like, oh, I'm going to write the introduction to this paper, and you're going to do the materials and methods. But if you don't talk to one another and weave those together, you end up getting like these little stints of this is well written, this is poor, or it's really jarring to read different writing styles.
I think you're spot on, what you said with students, and I would say...
Well, with any, just as an example, yeah.
Exactly. Back to the room, would you all agree, disagree, add anything to his comment?
Without the briefing, you would have this shoddy product, that wasn't meshed properly.
There's a terminology I've heard a lot in business and industry. It's kind of silo mentality or the over-the-wall mentality. Have any of you ever heard those before? What's a silo? Anybody here grow up on a farm? What's a silo? You know.
Really tall thing that they keep all the corn.
So a silo is a very tall thing. It's hard to get into and hard to get out of, correct? So if your business is run in silos, and you have silo A here and silo B here, how much interaction is there going to be between silo A and silo B? Okay. So silos in business are bad. Same way with teams. I just add one other point and then we'll move on. The way that people reward individuals in groups and organizations, you can reward and set up rewards in such a way that it will incentivize the behavior you want. So if you reward people only on individual performance, then they will focus on their specific component only. But if the reward is a combination of individual and group performance, that will change their behavior. Would you agree? Depends. It depends upon how well the goals are defined and how well they're held accountable and how appropriate the measurement is. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Because sometimes fudge factors come into play and relationships or unclear goals.
Yeah, and I think it's about personal motivation, right? So I think if you have some who are really great team players, and you have some who are not. And I think that, even if the goals are really clear and you incentivize, it doesn't necessarily mean that, and that's just an example of perhaps that's not the right fit for that person in that position, right? So, but it generally speaking, yes, I think that's absolutely true. But I think it's just, it can still be that, taking care to understand someone's motivations as you put them in a place within a team, I think is a really important thing.
Why it's really important to understand where their strengths are.
Yeah.
But more about that later.
Yeah.
So, small group, typically under 10, but it doesn't mean you couldn't have a bigger team, and sometimes a team can have subgroups. Complementary skills, sort of like puzzle pieces. Common purpose. The other thing that's very important about that common purpose is everybody needs to know what that purpose is. Having a purpose that has not been shared is of no value. Mutually accountable. When we've done this first session in past years, we've talked about conflict. I decided to pull that piece out this year because I wanted to focus more on strengths. But it's been my experience that people, in many cases, are not good at dealing with conflict, and because they can't deal with that, then issues don't get confronted that need to be addressed. Conflict can be good. So, in order for teams to be successful, it's important for the people to understand what their goal is. They need to understand themselves, and then they also need to understand the rest of their teammates. How many of you have ever played for a team where you knew the other people so well that you didn't even have to talk, you knew what the person was going to do? What was that like?
For me, it was easy because if I didn't do something, she already knew what I wanted to do, and she'll take care of that piece. So I have a teacher, Ms. Spanos, we work well together that way. So, but now they split us up, and we can't stand it. But I'm telling you, we were like the team duo, so it was perfect.
We're going to come back to that thought in just a minute. We're going to talk about the Tuckman model, because you just hit on a very key point. Every time the membership on a team changes,